Welcome, Divine Light Accelerators. Welcome to Season 3 of Own Your Divine Light Show. I am Janet Miller, the Divine Light Activator, and I am so happy to have you here during this critical time in humanity's expansion. This is a momentous time, something none of us have experienced before, and I feel it's so important to share our experiences. We are in the shift of ages, we are learning about ourselves, and it is a gift. And if you are healthy, it is a gift, and if you are recovering or lost someone, I send you my heartfelt blessings. Right now, I want to have a moment of silence for our brothers and sisters of color. So I'm just going to ask us all to just close our eyes for a minute, send them a blessing, and send them our love. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And we are here to send you love and blessings because you all deserve to live in safety, and we are here to love, learn, and support you in any way we can. We are ready to create the world we are waiting for, and we get to do this together. So what will be our new normal as our world continues to shift? I'm so thrilled to welcome our special guest, Freddie Silva. Freddie is a best-selling author and leading researcher of ancient civilizations, restricted history, sacred sites, and their interaction with consciousness. He is also a leading expert on crop circles. He has 6 books published in 6 languages. I love this. Described by one CEO as perhaps the best metaphysical speaker in the world right now. I'm privileged to have him here. For 2 decades, he has been an international keynote speaker with notable appearances at the International Science and Consciousness Conference, the International Society for the Study of Subtle Energies and Energy Medicine, and the Association for Research and Enlightenment, in addition to many appearances on Gaia TV, History Channel, BBC, and radio shows such as Coast to Coast, and also a documentary filmmaker, which I didn't know, art photographer, and leads private tours to secret sites in England, France, Egypt, Portugal, Yucatan, Malta, Peru, Bolivia, and he also lives in Portland, Maine, which is in my part of the world. So it is such an honor to have you here, Freddie, and thrilled. So,
pleasure.
So glad you're here. And I just want to ask you, and this, I know you rolled your eyes when I said I'm going to ask you about yourself, but here we go. How did you start with this work that you do, to tell you the truth? I mean, that's the question I want to start with, is how did you get into this actual sacred sites? And I know you started with crop circles, because I mentioned how I met you in Glastonbury, Connecticut at the Megalithomania way long ago. I bought one of your first crop circle calendars. And I loved it, and I still have it. I don't throw those things away. I love those. I love the crop circles. Do you still lead tours? You don't lead tours there at all, do you?
To England?
To the crop circles?
No, because there's hardly any that are real anymore.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah, and we knew this years ago. Back in 2003, the last complex one that we saw was back in 2003. And now you might get 1 or 2 a year, simple things, not attracting any attention, because it's part of a conversation. And so I don't want to be part of the hubris and all the commercialism that comes with this. People are being deceived. I mean, really, they really are. I don't want to be part of that. I didn't give up my life to follow a commercial trail for the sake of commercialism. And it's becoming that, unfortunately. And it's also, enticing people to make more and more, and because they feed on this stuff. But if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what the crop circles are all about and the real phenomenon, forget about the time frame and go back before 1999, because that's where the real meat is. It's really good information. It doesn't have an expiry date. It's a bit like saying that pyramid over there was built, 10,000 years ago. Well, let's go look for another one because it's a bit old, it's a bit out of date. So that's what I always tell people. But at the same time, for people who obviously hear this as being really depressing, there is a benefit to this, and that is that the physical designs of the originals may be gone, long gone, but the energy is in the ground, and you find the energy connected to the energy pathways that go to the local sacred sites. Even here in North America, in Canada, for example, in Saskatchewan and Alberta, they're still getting real ones there, simple ones, simple circles. No one pays any attention to them because they're not important looking, but they are powerful. And they are opening up the energy to the local sacred sites. And you see in the last 20 years, more people suddenly wanting to go to visit the ancient places, and there's the connection. So you may not have real crop circles, but you are ingesting their energy. You're in the land, you're soaking it in, and you're going to the sacred places, which are now cleansed by that energy, and you're still picking up that energy. So all is not lost. It's part of the plan. But the idea was that it was a conversation, and like all conversations, has a beginning and an end. And they said, and this is in channeled material 25 years ago that we knew this, that it would give you the information, and I'm quoting directly from the source, we'd give you the information, and then it's up to humans to figure out what to do with it. You've got to be the people who are now implementing this stuff. We can't do things for you. We're just telling you that you're in deep trouble. Changes are coming, whether you like it or not, and we're in the middle of them, but you have to implement the information that we're giving you. That's why we call ourselves Watchers, the name of the group that's making the crop circles, because we can't intervene directly on your behalf. And if you look through history, you find these people, they were called the gods of old, and you find them in every culture on earth. They're all connected, and at some point they did have a human form, very unusual looking people. So yeah, the whole story comes around back to our own history. So it's a 12,000-year-old story that's still in the making today. And when I asked, why are you still coming in physical form? I said, well, we kind of used to be the tall people and unusual looking people in your history, and you can check us out, and you can. But we stopped coming in physical form because we got tired of being crucified.
Ooh.
And that was their own words.
Really?
They used to get chased around, and in fact, by humans who found them unusual. Of course, they were frightened by them. And I found the story also in South America with the original god Viracocha, who, with his 7 shining ones, because that's what their name means in South America, his group of craftspeople, one of whom was a woman, they were doing incredible things for humanity after the flood wiped out the earth. They built the temples, they gave people the accoutrements of civilization. And then, despite what they gave us, there are still groups of human hunter-gatherers that looked upon these 8.5-foot tall people with elongated heads and blonde or red hair and long beards, which is very unusual in South America, by the way. They basically start throwing stones at them, go back into the ocean where you came from. And there is a story there that said, yeah, eventually Viracocha and his group just got back on a raft, skimmed across the surface, never to be seen again. And you hear that a lot in Central America as well. So yeah, there were groups of people that just didn't vie with them, but there were also groups of humans that also saw what the gods did for us, and they saw that as an element of power. If we become like them or act like them, we can get rid of them and we can be the gods, and then we can subjugate humans. Completely wrong idea. But that's where you get that sort of black and white movement of people who are doing the right thing, and the people who take over the priesthood, they take over the chair of the pharaoh. And sometimes you get a good person, then you get a bad one. It's a bit like presidents. You get a good one, you get a bad one. You know what I'm saying? It's part of the human history. So yeah, they had the same problems that we have, even though they were considered to be much more evolved than us.
Wow, that's powerful. Those are things I wasn't even aware of. So that's really great to hear. And I'm excited to hear that the crop circles are not like there's still energy there. I love that you said that we can.
Yeah, the image is just getting your attention. It's like going to Stonehenge. Yeah, everybody goes there to take a selfie and take a picture. But the stones are not what's really important. I mean, they're fulfilling a function for sure. But what's truly important is the invisible temple. It's what's inside. It's what you feel, and what all of the stones and the position and the geometry are doing to your insides, your electromagnetic field. That's the purpose of the temple. So the visuals just get your attention. Like there's a bunch of rocks over there. Let's go and take a look. Well, while you're in there, you're going to start feeling a little bit more. It's a very technical term. It's called the tingly winglies. People who are open to this, you don't even have to believe it. You just have to be open or accepting that something's unusual here. It starts influencing your state of awareness. And from that point, you begin to bridge that chasm to another level of reality. And that's where the magic begins. So the crop circles behave exactly in the same way, which is why, you're asking, how did I get started in this? I was drawing pyramids when I was 3. I got involved. I mean, I always loved the ancient world. I got involved in the commercial world for many years. And then every time I got laid off, I get a chance to pick up those books that I had in my library, sit down with a cup of coffee. You're in between job interviews, you might as well read something. And I figured, how can I make a living out of this? This is where my heart is. And I got involved into it through crop circles. Wrote a book that becomes an international bestseller by accident, I mean, or by design. Who knows? And then I went backwards. I realized that the crop circles are really just flattened areas of crop which mimic the same process as a temple. They're built on exactly the same laws. So I began to research the origin of sacred sites, and here I am, 20-odd years later, still doing it. So it's a wonderful story in my own evolvement as well. But it also means that I can teach from an experiential point of view, which makes it all much more worthwhile. It's not an opinion. It's an actual experience that I'm having based on evidence that you can actually regurgitate at a dinner table, and then you can be invited back for dinner. You don't have to look like you're crazy,
This is true. Yes.
Yeah.
This is the brand new book, The Missing Lands, which is amazing, and uncovering Earth's pre-flood civilization, which I think is so fascinating. And there's so many places in there. What is the most, I was really fascinated by how you connected. So many things are connected. I mean, many of the sites, even in the United States, I was surprised that you were talking about, like in the, was it Minnesota, around the Midwest, there was some site there that, Oklahoma. You talked about a place there that they found this amazing tile floor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was fascinating. So how do you connect all these? Like, how do you do this? I mean, just tell us, how does this work for you?
I thought everybody has the same ability, but it turns out they don't.
No.
I mean, really, for me, it's like, this is easy. Why do I have to be an expert on this stuff? I used to do this for a living when I was in advertising and design. So I take a marketing brief, a lot of words, and I have to condense that into an image or a slogan that I can sell toothpaste or a motor car. And I'm looking at connections, I'm looking at dots. I'm able to see things here which are connected to that thing over there, and I can cross-reference. And like I said, I thought everybody has that same ability, but apparently they don't. I just apply the same mechanism. I try to bring as much information, as much evidence as I can gather. I like to draw from a big pool. So it's very multidisciplinary. So when you're talking about electromagnetism and gravity and the types of stones that are being used or mythology, you think these things don't connect, but they do. That's the magic of it. And the people that built these places were magicians, and they are described as such in every culture around the world. They have, they're able to control the laws of nature. Everything was at their disposal. And I figured, let me think as though I was one of them. How would I see the world from that point of view? Put myself in their shoes. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm pulling from different resources, and then I can see how they're all interconnected. So, going back to the mosaic floor in Oklahoma, yeah, I mean, there's an incredible story from 1965 in a local paper, the Oklahoman, and he talks about how they were digging the foundation for a warehouse. It was 30 feet deep, and they hit bedrock, which in that part of the world is limestone, and they found this mosaic floor. So they invited a geologist, and they said, actually, there's grout in the middle, and the mosaics are aligned to the equinox, and there's post holes which are equidistant, and they're based on the ancient unit of measure that was used to build Stonehenge pyramids and stone circles. Nature doesn't behave like that. Right. And of course you get the opposite guys showing up and saying, no, it's all natural. So you get that sort of tangle of minds. There's always a debunking, because obviously there's no one that could have been in Oklahoma in 30,000 BC. Well, that was the problem. Someone was in Oklahoma in 30,000 BC when that part of the world was still, kind of bedrock and ocean, and they left the vestiges there, and they died, natural cause, and then the silt builds up, and the civilization is gone. And just around the corner, there was a coal mine where they found two pieces of, I think it was a kettle or kind of a pot, an iron pot embedded in a massive lump of coal, and it was witnessed by the owner of the mine and two of the workers that dug it up, because they had to break it apart, to send to someone's house. Wow. So there's obviously something going on there. And the fact that even the Wichita of Oklahoma, one of the oldest tribes in North America, they talk about the time when the gods moved across North America after a great flood. They were the survivors of a once proud race. They were very tall, and they called them giants. And they said they tried to mate with our women, which is a wonderful honor. The problem is, the women gave birth to infants and they killed the mothers. obviously. It was a genetic mismatch, not just a size mismatch. So
Sure.
they had to wander off and breed among themselves, and they just lost hope and died out. There's not many survivors. So it's a sad story both ways. So yeah, even in North America, you have these wonderful stories of the integration between the gods and human beings.
Yeah, I was so surprised to see that they came here. I mean, I know they say I've heard a long time ago how the ancient, the ancient, we're going to find out how old we really are. It's coming up. That's
Oh,
why some of these
absolutely.
things are being discovered, right? And you're doing this research. I mean, you're definitely one of the leading researchers bringing this through to connect the dots and say, okay, but they built over that floor, which was sad to see. They totally discounted it and said, okay, let's build. I think it was some sort of plant on top. So it's there, so to hopefully preserve somehow.
Yeah, and I think that the thing with historians and archaeologists and academics is that they can't understand how myth is such a wonderful theatrical device to tell people about a real story. I mean, if I was just to tell you the story of a spaceship landing, you'd probably go, oh, that's really amazing, but you'd forget that a generation later after you watch television. But if you wrap it up in an incredible story, like a theatrical device, like the story of Arthur and the Holy Grail, which is a retelling of Jason and the Argonauts, which is a retelling of the story of Isis and Osiris.
Mm,
Because of the drama that's put into the story, you remember this from age to age. It's like remembering Shakespeare. That stuff is impossible to memorize, but the stories are so interwoven that you can't help but think about them. That's a device to encode real information that is timeless, and historians don't get that. So when you have people in British Columbia, I don't remember the name of the Native American tribe there, but they're very old. They're talking about when they were there in 12,000 BC, before the Ice Age. And of course, it gets dismissed and said, no, we actually lived here. There was a village right here on the ocean, and the ocean was much lower. The islands were connected, which they were. British Columbia is basically a drowned valley. And one group of archaeologists said, well, let's find out if it's true. And they dug in the specific area, and they found at that particular level of strata, there was a village there 12,000 years ago. So some of them are beginning to get it. They begin to understand that the stories really are true. It's like the story of Plato and Atlantis, which is suicidal for any academic to talk about this. Well, there's a bit of a problem with the story because Plato didn't come up with the story. It was Solon, another Greek historian who was in Egypt, and the Egyptians were telling him and admonishing the Greeks that they are too young. Their civilization is far too young. Wait till you've been around for 36,000 years like we have. And that's actually written down in the Egyptian texts. And they talk about this land, an island of fire, from where the gods came. They don't actually mention Atlantis, they just call it an island of fire. And I think Plato took it to mean the Azores, somewhere out in the middle of the ocean in the Atlantic. He wasn't actually far off. And they gave him the date according to the time of Solon, which is 9,600 BC. Now, if you ask the geologists about that date, they'll say, well, that's barely within 100 years after the Great Flood. And we have the evidence now to back up the fact that there was a huge flood in 9,703 BC. Now, you go over to the Yucatan and you read the Chilam Balam, which is one of the most sacred books of the Maya, and there's a date of 9,600 BC when the people called the Its, which means magician priests, escaped a sinking land in the middle of the Atlantic called Atl, which the Aztecs then called Atitlan. And they arrived on the Yucatan coast with three other gods. One's called Itzamna, Kukulkan, and Quetzalcoatl. And they were named, they were titles, they're not names, they were titles. There were many Quetzalcoatl, just to confuse things. And they said, yeah, they arrived here in 9,600 BC. So now you've just validated the date the Egyptians had that they gave to Solon, who gives it to Plato that talks about the myth of Atlantis. So this is what I mean why it's important to cross-reference things. Teachings from a multiple point of view to come up with which we hope to be the absolute truth.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I have to read the whole entirety, but I was just, let's see, there was a couple of parts in here if I can. I know the Egyptians, I mean, the story of the Egyptians, even how, well, the actual beginning of Egyptians were the gods. I mean, the stories of the gods coming down, and then they sort of like what you're saying, taking over the role of the gods? Were they chased away, or did they just choose to leave Egypt?
Oh, in Egypt, it was very different. And in fact, we have a very good record, and it's called the Building Texts. And there was a lady called Eve Raymond who died recently, an incredible academic. I mean, she's a pure academic from Manchester in England. And I have the book. It's bloody expensive. I mean, $600 on eBay.
Wow.
And it's full of notes, of course. It's incredible because she's just translating the building text verbatim. She's not applying a filter. So she really has no idea what it's talking about. She's just saying, this means that, that says that. And I'm looking at this from what I know about Egypt. I'm going, my God, they're telling you everything about the pre-flood world. And one incredible moment talks about the arrival of the gods in Egypt, just after a major catastrophe when apparently the earth was struck by something quite big and it stopped the world moving westwards and it started moving to the right. And the Egyptians said, you know, there are times when this happens, when the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. And sometimes the earth actually goes upside down.
Yeah,
We get hit by things all the time.
mm-hmm.
And they were talking about with the gods arriving because they partly had sunk their island of creation. And they were scouting for a place to rebuild their temples to mimic the land that they had before. And it just happens to coincide that their arrival along the Nile coincides with an unusual agricultural development along that region in 10,500 BC. So we have archaeological evidence that shows that humans were domesticating cattle and crop at that moment. It's a complete anomaly, and it matches exactly the moment that these gods arrived.
Wow.
So they build the mounds. As far as I'm aware, there's either 8 or 9 original mounds. Edfu is on top of one of them. Karnak is another. And of course, the Great Pyramids of Giza and all of that. And eventually they build the original temples in 10,400 BC. The dates are all there. And the alignments to the stars are all there. And they knew that there was another catastrophe coming. They could prognosticate what was happening in the sky relative to the earth. And they could see 300 years ahead of time. And the story is also in the book of Enoch in the Bible, by the way, the same time frame, that, the earth is going to be in a certain place in the sky at this particular moment. And, oh dear, we're going to be hit with big objects. And we now consider it to be the Taurine meteor shower. It happens to us every November, and it's the source of huge problems around the earth. So they were hurrying up and building things, and they finished off the pyramids, they finished off other temples, and then they got hit. And they said, some of us are going to die, some of us are going to survive, and the survivors will come back to Egypt and finish the job that we started. And you do see several building periods in Egypt at that time, just looking at the masonry. And then they said, well, we're going to have to step back. We started the bloodline, the divine bloodline, but now we're going to let the humans take over. It's their time. We know our time is done. It's their time. So we're going to step back. We're going to choose candidates which we believe are responsible and spiritually aware, just like us, and we put them on the throne, and then we're going to step back and watch what happens. And the story goes that the followers of Horus, who are called also the Shining Ones, allowed humans to do their own thing, pharaoh after pharaoh after pharaoh. And they also said that sometimes the humans just didn't get it. You got another nasty person taking over the throne. So the people began to be led astray with lies again and falsehoods. They had to remove those people. They go back on the throne until another human can be chosen. And if that became a problem, they would inseminate the women so that they became a half human, half divine bloodline. And they actually write about that. And they said that lasted until 3100 BC. And they said that when the first pharaoh of a purely human bloodline takes the throne of Egypt, and that was Mena in 3100 BC, which is coincidentally the very moment that the Maya culture appears in Central America, the start of their culture in Central America, and the start of the fifth world. So there are overlaps and overlaps. So they didn't exactly get chased away. They kind of went into the fabric of the culture. They were watching from a distance. But their lineage survived well into the historic era with Amenhotep III and his massive elongated skull, his son Akhenaten, and of course Tutankhamun and all the daughters, and they all have that feature. And by that time, of course, the interbreeding is taking its toll on their body. They're starting to have real physical issues, as you do when you interbreed for so long with so few people. But the evidence is all there. They were still around. And eventually, they intermarried with the princes of Scythia, and they became the foundation of the bloodline in Scotland and Ireland. But that's another story.
Wow. Yeah, I know one of your tours, and I know you do tons of tours, is going to Scotland, hopefully, if it works out, right? Is that one of
I
your?
hope so. We're right at the cusp of please take down the damn quarantine rules.
I know, I know that
14
that's an
days
amazing. I
quarantine.
haven't.
You go to the hotel, you stay in the hotel, and you miss the entire tour. It's not going to work well.
It's so interesting what's going on here. So, well, how do you see what's going on? How is this world being affected? That what do you see as why are we being affected like we are? I mean, just
Oh, I
my
think it's part of a big plan. It's a big plan of change. I mean, we've all talked about 2012. Nothing happened, of course, and nothing was going to happen.
right.
The mind just kind of yawned when they hear about this, and a lot of people make a lot of money out of it. They said, you got it all wrong. All the white people got it all wrong. What happened is that 2012 is the middle of a window of opportunity. It doesn't just happen like that. It's a big window because things on Earth happen glacially. Human development is a slow process from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And, a bit like one day you have a really great president and it opens up a huge possibility and you get its knee-jerk reaction when the next guy comes along and changes everything for the worse. But that helps to wake up another portion of people. That's how it's always been happening here. So we just have to be patient. And they're saying there's a 60-year window of opportunity. Now,
Really?
so if you take that 30 years to 2012, that's 2042. Now, 2042 and the period between now and then is filled with all kinds of issues. And the trick is that human consciousness has to evolve to a critical point. And I can say we're very, very close to hitting this. It doesn't require 50%. The number's a lot less than that. I can tell you from all the traveling that I do, I see a lot of great things happening. You don't get to hear about them because they just don't make great newspaper selling devices. Good news just doesn't sell news, unfortunately. I think we're all hardwired with a depression gene. We crave that angst that we have to hear angst all the time, and we complain the world's such a terrible place. But the truth is that we are in this process of chaos because we have to break down the old order, which has been going on for 5,000 years, and it's done. We have to jump to the new level of order. Now, a scientist listening to this would understand this. They'll say, well, that's chaos theory. There's only two things that happen in the universe. There's order and there's chaos. But if you're experiencing a high level of chaos right now, that means that there's a huge potential to a greater level of order. That's how it works. A small level of chaos goes to a small level of order, but a huge amount of chaos leads to the potential of a huge element of order. So it's actually quite positive when you think about it. The
Yes.
trick is to listen to what the ancients were saying. We've been through this before many times. I mean, we had burning mountains coming out of the sky and obliterating the earth. You're not even getting that. What are you whining about? The trick
Yeah.
is to learn about the teachings. Be stoic, be elegant, ride things with elegance and in control. Don't fall for fear. Have food ready, know where to get food and good water, and have good connections with people. That's all you really need, and keep your psychology grounded, okay? Don't pay attention to the things that you have no control over, at least directly. Tend to your own garden, like Gandhi said, and be the change you wish to see. So you have more control over your immediate environment. You don't have to believe this, you just have to accept it. If you can accept that, I can guarantee that 50% of your worries will disappear immediately. I mean, I've just lost a third of my income for the whole year because of I can't fly anywhere. I'm not worried. I know that things will work out. I'm just doing other things in my own time. That's how I get around it. So it is good things. And the pandemic itself is also a product of several things. One, the tampering of nature, which is not a good idea. And I do believe, I can't prove it yet, but this really did come from a laboratory and it was accidentally leaked out. And there's a lot of saving face going on right now. And I'll put a $1 bet that I'm actually right. And the second thing is the pollution, the amount of pollution that's going on. If you look at the clusters, the main clusters of the pandemic are areas of high pollution. England, for example, huge problems with pollution. Italy, huge problems with pollution, and it's degrading your system to be able to take care of itself. I have friends of mine in the medical profession, and I respect their view, of course. And I'm saying, I go out, and the only time I wear a mask is when I'm in close proximity to people in a close environment. I don't want them to get whatever I have. So far, I've been very lucky. I might even sell my cells for for research because apparently I'm immune to this stuff. So, you know, it'll help somebody else. But I said, you know, it's interesting. I actually want to be at the center of where these pandemics are. And I've come from Egypt and England, two huge centers of pandemics, and I'm still okay. So I'm helping to build my own immune system because that's what you do. And the trick is let the healthy build up their immune system and then take care of the people who are compromised. And then we can be of better service to them and business can get along. Just take some basic precautions. Don't breathe on people, don't touch them. And that minimizes the risk. And just stay healthy. And I heard that vitamin K apparently is a great boost to your system that actually keeps back the coronavirus. That's a brand new research. So, and it's funny, the moment I arrived from Egypt, I went on a binge of eating kale and spinach. I don't know why. I mean, really over the top. And now I discovered that it's full of vitamin K. So your body knows what to do if you just listen. So again, it's just taking some basic precautions, but I think it's part of the big breakdown in society that we need to evolve. And in fact, the circle makers were saying the same thing too, 30 years ago. We're giving you information that will help you overcome the changes that are upon you. It's to do with technology, it's to do with how you're working with the earth. Some of the circles are not even meant for people, they're meant for the earth itself, to get it to flow in a way that doesn't destroy us, because they were saying the earth is going to overturn itself very, very soon, and you need to be prepared, and you're not. We're just buying you time. There are some crop circles that are slowly moving the energy of the earth, dissipating it slowly so it doesn't come as a big shock. So they're doing us a huge favor. So we're part of in this entangled story right now. And more people are becoming much more aware that we are in the middle of a huge change and we have to make changes within our lives. But this is the way it's always been. You can't go from here to there on the same bus. You have to change the bus sometimes and take a riverboat and get there by riverboat, but you'll get there. The trick is to be much more aware and not fall into all the, the chit chat of fear and all the personal opinions that are dressed up as facts. That's where you kind of go wrong. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to get there. We have all the tools, and people that were here before us, they went through worse things. I mean, the influenza pandemic of 1918 was far, far worse than we're getting it now. But we're still here. And you know what? They developed a vaccine and it still doesn't work. Yeah, people still die from the flu every year in huge numbers, unfortunately. So I think the trick is just to build up our immune system and be aware of what's around us and what we're putting into our body. It almost seems like common sense sometimes, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I've been very lucky, and so is my family, and even my daughter-in-law, who works in a hospital, did have the loss of appetite and smell, but she was fine. She recovered, where one of her coworkers did not. And she was older and she was, did not make it through. So it's amazing just to see side by side. And it's all about your immune system. I feel the same, all about taking care of yourself, your nutrition, vitamins. Yep. I take a lot of zinc. Zinc is also very good.
Cell phone use.
Pardon me?
Not too much cell phone use.
Right.
That's one of the worst things, actually. I was privy to a research that was done when the first flip phone came out. So this is back in the 90s, I think.
Oh my gosh.
And I helped lay out the article because I was the art director. And I'll save you the bad news. He went to Sweden to look at the research, which of course the research in that part of the world is not bought by the companies that make the cell phones like they are in America. It's a self-serving response. So he got all the research on the cell phone activity. This is back when you had 1G, not 5G. And he said, basically, if you keep your cell phone next to your head, where 90% of the body has its water, which means that you have a 2 gigahertz frequency device, it's boiling the water in your head like a microwave oven, which means that 4 minutes next to your ear is okay. After 4 minutes, you may as well stick your head in the microwave oven, and that's where you get retinal cancer, loss of memory, and then your rest of the system follows with it. Well, now you have 5G. That's 5 times as strong. Think of where this is going. Of course, the lack of attention span goes with it. There was a time when policemen in Britain were getting terrible eye tumors because their communication system's up here. So they said, well, put it on your hip. Well, now they get testicular cancer. No matter where you put it, it's still there. The trick is use it for what it's meant to be, a communication device when you are desperate to communicate with somebody. If you're on this thing all day long, it's not going to do anything for your immune system, and that's part of the problem as well.
That's so
I still
fascinating.
have a landline, by the way.
Me too. I still have a landline, so I'm with you.
Anybody who's listening, if you're under 30, you have to Google landline.
That's true. Yeah, and even phone books. I mean, that just cracks me up. I say to my kids who are in their 30s, you know, do you ever use a phone book? I don't even know how to use a phone book, Mom and Dad. I just start laughing. They don't have a clue what a phone book is. I
I was
mean,
just trying to buy a rotary phone, see if I could develop that into a digital line into my landline. I haven't found one that's, I like
oh,
more from the 70s, you know, little
yeah.
rectangular trim phones, that lovely sound. And you just
Uh-huh.
sit there and do this. And you put that, you give that to a bunch of kids and they don't know how to operate it. It's very comical.
I know. And then we look at them sometimes and they can just, you know, go through a computer and do all these things so quickly. So it's interesting.
Exactly. We're going, how do they do that?
Yeah, I love it. So, I really am so thrilled that you're here. So like you've just given so much great information. So any of these connections through the earth that you talk about and all the sacred site, is there any one particular site you feel is like, maybe you don't want to give it away yet. Maybe this is,
I don't want
but
anyone to go there.
what is that?
I don't want the tourists to go there.
Oh, no. All right. Then we won't send them there. But what do you feel is the total? I know you'd see the link. The links are amazing. And is Egypt the link? I mean, is that the main link? What do you feel is the main country?
They all are the main link.
It's all just
It depends how you're feeling. I mean, the temples really are there as a reminder that when you forget that you're a temple, you have everything you need. You don't need a temple. You don't need to go to Egypt. You don't need to this, although it's kind of fun, obviously.
oh, sure.
Even Jesus said this, you know, the temple of God resides within you. And he's absolutely right. He's repeating a Buddhist ideal, and they're repeating a Zen ideal, which is over 10,000 years old. I mean, this information goes back to Japan from that era. And they were saying, yeah, you can train your inner temple to connect with everything in the universe. You don't need external stuff. But when you forget who you are and why you're here, we built something for you so that when you go in there, we mimic the process of, of creation, for lack of a better word, and you can put yourself in this perfect environment, which is a mirror image of nature itself, which is why it looks so good. If you just allow yourself to be quiet for a few minutes, boom, you're gone. And you come back a completely different person. So depending on where you are in your stage in life, or even during the day, you get called to different sites. So sometimes, I mean, Scotland for me is still one of my favorites because so few people go to the places where we go. Until Outlander came out, now everybody's going to be there. It's like my local hotel innkeeper is like, I know we need the business, but we don't need these people. It's bringing so much silly attention to the circles, and they respect the circles. So there are places there, though, in the islands that I've never seen people where we go. And I only take 6 people with me, and I just point them in the right direction. I don't say anything. I can't peel them away. And they are very different to when they come out, really quite different, because the sites are so unpolluted by human folly, which is the beauty of northern Scotland. It's hard to get to. The weather's horrible. The food is, all these things keep a lot of people away. You have to be a hardy soul to go there, but that's part of the process. Sometimes it's Peru. I mean, the energy and the altitude of the temples is so powerful that you get a hit immediately. And you know what? I've been trying to get there for most of my life. It's only the last, 8 years I finally got there because it wasn't my energy. My body didn't need that. But now I crave it and I understand why. If I'd gone there without my, building up my system, my electrical system and my understanding, it wouldn't have done anything for me. Egypt, I'm always attracted to because of my connection to that location of the world. And sometimes it's just a natural temple like Shiprock at the Four Corners, which for me is one of the most powerful places on earth. And it's called a natural landscape temple because the Native Americans didn't really build anything. It's just there. They know where the energy is. And sometimes it's this big throat of an eroded volcano. It looks like a petrified angel. If you want to ever experience the true magnitude of power of a sacred site, and it doesn't have to show it off, you just go and stand in front of Shiprock. And you get it. You'll understand. I mean, grown men cry when they're at the foot of that hill and you go, wow. And you feel it. You can hear the ancestors speaking with you. It's so, so close. So yeah, it depends what I'm looking for and what my body needs at the time. And over the last few years, I've been drawn to New Zealand, and it became part of the new book, which actually helped me understand how all the gods are tied together around the world. I didn't
Yeah.
know they were all connected. They are. They're all interconnected. And there's a fabulous story of people who come from that part of the world that were in Easter Island when they were still calling it an archipelago, not an island, a series of islands. They talk about the gods being in the flood, being overwhelmed by it when they're going on the way to New Zealand. So you can imagine that this story did not go well with the academics in New Zealand, because apparently there are people there before the Maori, a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And there are sites there which are mind-blowing, and hardly anyone knows about them. So, and once I published the information, the local tribal people of the Waitaha, which are the people that I'm talking about, they said, actually, you're pretty close to the truth. And
Wow.
quite right on, which is great for me, because I was trying to validate their story in terms of how the temples are aligned with certain specific stars, and I can get a date. And they said, yep, it's spot on.
Wow.
So for me, it's a wonderful confirmation of that work. It's a wonderful blend that I'm using the science to validate their myth, but the feel of the temple, I can't put my finger on anything around the world where you feel so connected to a site that's so unpolluted by any kind of human folly or thought. You become instantly psychic the moment you're there. You can see like a screen showing you what was happening 10,000 years ago. There's mammals running down the hills in this forest, and I'm going, what did I have for breakfast? I can see this so clearly. People around me are looking at me like, oh, you're smoking something weird. No, I can actually see it because the energy is working with my electrical system, and it's telling me a story. I need to write about this. So it's a personal experience. And every time I go there, I come back a very different person, knowing a bit more each time. So that's what I usually recommend to people. Follow the gut feeling that this year you want to go to Egypt, or you want to go to Peru, or you want to go somewhere in the Native American out west, because your body's subconscious is saying, I am not whole. I need something. And each temple is designed for a specific purpose. And it's telling you, oh, I've got that. Why don't you come here? So you got to listen to your body. It knows what it wants, not this bit.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense, because I've been to Peru. I've been there. I was there in 1977. I went to Machu Picchu before it was ever, blown up. Like, I haven't been there since, because I'm like, I know, I heard it's crazy. I wouldn't even recognize it, because I remember going up the mountain, and we were in a van. It was just me and my husband. We're going up a van, and there was a little boy just running up the hill alongside us and waving. It stopped at each level, and I was like, oh my God, how's he doing it? And we're at this huge, foot high mountain, and he's going right to the top with us, running right up the side of the hill. I was fascinated by him. And then we get to the top, and it's like, oh my gosh, how did they do that? How did they, it was amazing to be there. So
these
early.
Sick white people, they just don't get it.
It was such a blessing to be there. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was in New Zealand in 2017. So that was pretty exciting. And I lived in Australia in the 80s for 2.5 years, but I never got to New Zealand. I'm like, this is not right. I have to get to New Zealand. So this time I still went to Australia, Uluru, and I know you're supposed to be going there for a big conference, hoping it all goes through.
Yeah, their summer solstice, which is a wonderful privilege. And I hope to go to the neighboring site. It's only 25 kilometers away, and no one really knows about it. It's where the grandmothers do all their wisdom keeping. I always find, for some reason, that the women have all the juiciest information. Same with the Waitaha. There was a written oral tradition of the males. I thought, that's really interesting. And then I got a hold of the grandmother's story. I went, now that's really interesting. I haven't heard that before. So I want to try and sneak away and go to the adjacent site,
Sure. Yeah. Well, the women of the chalice, aren't we? We are the Pisces. So.
And in fact, with all the stories of all the gods that appear after the flood, there's always the charismatic leader, very tall, elongated head, red hair, green eyes. And then you have these 7 helpers, and there's always one woman, and she's the one that holds all the wisdom. She's also married to him, and she's also his sister. I think it's a metaphor. I think it's not quite the way it sounds. But there was a lot of interbreeding in the family. Yeah. The specialness was in the blood itself. This whole concept of blue blood and the royal blood.
Yes.
Their ability to be different was literally in the blood itself. We didn't know much more about that, but certainly makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I think you need to write like a complete new history book for the world, because
Oh, I
maybe
have.
well, you have with all your books. I guess
All the 6 books.
so you, I guess to put them all together would be a complete new history. So that's
Oh my God. I already get hate mail saying, please stop writing books that are so big and so thick, because I read one chapter and I have to put it down for a week. I said, yeah, that's the point.
it's a lot. Yeah.
It's not supposed to be a quick fix. I want you to be informed. I don't want to give you my interpretation. I want you to give you facts. I want you to figure out the truth.
Yes.
Otherwise, that's just my point of view. We have a lot of points of view on television. We don't need any more points of view. We want, evidence. We want fact, and I want to let you figure it out. I want you to empower yourself. And yeah, it kind of works. But sometimes there are people, and of course they're being tongue in cheek. It's like, you bastard, this is going to do my head in for another 6 months. And yep, it did my head in for 6 months.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I know. I love it. I love it. So I'm going to have to start from the beginning and read all of them, because I haven't done all of them yet. But I love the work you're doing. Thank you so
And there's
much.
a plan as well. I didn't plan this out, but the ending of each book is the beginning of the next one. And I should have figured this out 20 years ago to make my
You've
life
been,
easier.
you've
I'm
been
sitting here
guided.
now
Yeah.
going, what should I do next? If I just read the ending of the last one, there should be a clue right there.
And you
So
get it. Absolutely.
someone's manipulating this, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I always laugh because every time I think of your name, I have to say this. I always want to call you Peter, and I don't know why. It's like, what?
Really?
He's Freddie. And why do I want to call him Peter? It's like, I don't know. I always say that about you. I'm like, it's not Peter, it's Freddie, Janet.
Well, it might be a blessing. I mean, Peter comes from Ptah, which is the architect of the universe in Egypt.
Well,
So
maybe this, I've got chills all over me. Maybe this is part of, who you are in your higher self. I mean, you are who you,
I don't know. It's like, I mean,
something to
I'm
check out.
Portuguese by birth. I'm supposed to be 4 foot tall and quite round. And here I am, 6'5". I was blonde when I was young, and I'm blue, green-eyed. I mean, I really don't look like a Portuguese guy. So it does make you wonder. And the hill where I was born was the hill next to Lisbon, where the gods that didn't go to Yucatan, they went to the other side and they landed in Portugal at the base of that hill. They were
Ooh,
called the people of the serpent. That was their title of office. And the same name is given to the people that land in the Yucatan. So I'm wondering, someone in my family mated with someone that they shouldn't be mating with, and here I am, but who knows?
well, I think it was meant to be, wasn't it?
Everything is planned.
Yes. So I know you've given us huge messages. Any last words for 2020 that you want to give to our audience? Anything else you can say?
Drink heavily.
Drink
Uh,
heavily. Like what
and
kind?
read Stephen King, because nothing that he wrote could be as crazy as what's going on. Um, you just have to stay grounded and not get distracted by all the stuff on, especially on social media. There's so much nonsense on there. Just limit what comes into your field of vision, because it'll drive you crazy.
Yes.
And there's a lot of disinformation going out there. The trick is to stay grounded. Read good books. I usually go back to Pema Chodron, who's a wonderful teacher.
Yes. Yes.
Even when I was going through terrible times in my life, it glued me. Her books glued me. And
Hmm.
it's nothing new. It's very old information. It's about how to ride the crest of the tidal wave elegantly and stoically. If you can just do that, just hold your center, you'll get through this. And again, luck favors the prepared, so be prepared.
Hmm.
Anticipate the next moments, and go out and buy toilet paper. Now go out and buy a bicycle, because apparently that's the biggest thing that's going on right now. Everybody's going out buying bicycles like crazy.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the next rush.
Oh, I
So
haven't heard
because you just try and stay one step ahead by being calm. If you
that.
can stay calm while everyone else is running like headless chickens, you're already ahead of the game and you're in control. The trick is to be in control. And if you get it wrong, don't worry about it. No one's going to judge you for it. The reason why you're here and why you were born here on earth is because you're not perfect. And that goes for me too. I mean, the reason why I incarnated, I am not a god. I am not perfect. I come here to fix something. So take it easy on yourself. The trick is, when you die physically, you leave the place 1% better than when you found it, and learn something from the experience. And that's how it always has been and how it always will be. You go back to the other world a little bit better than when you arrived. If you can just do that, you're doing pretty well.
That is one. I love that. Thank you so much. I almost said Peter again. Freddie. I don't know. There's something there. I don't know. I got all chills when you said who Peter was. And I'm like, ooh, Peter the Rock, with the, I'm going, was he an apostle? Nah, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. So, I mean, I don't know if you have connected to any of the idea of any offer for the audience. Any ideas?
To any?
Any ideas for an offer for the audience? Is there something you'd like to offer to them?
I can't think of anything at the top of my head.
All right. Okay.
I don't know.
Well, you have books, so we can buy the books. The books are amazing, and your amazing cards. You have your beautiful cards, which are the crop circle cards.
Cards. Oh yes, they are very interesting things. And I think we were saying this before we started. That
Yeah, we were.
I've never advertised them. They come from a very interesting source, and in 20 years, no one has ever asked for their money back. And I get some extraordinary stories of things that people do with these things. And I just it's hands off. This comes from a very raw source, and we just respected the information and just put it out there without any fanfare, and they find the right people. And I'm always amazed still by the stories I get back from how people use these things. So yeah, they're worth looking at.
Those cards are amazing, and they're very reasonably priced too. And they're just so much information, and I know you can do so much with them to just, create better energy in your environment, all kinds of different things. So it's huge what you can do with them. So I appreciate that. And I'm just going to thank our audience for being here, and we would love to hear comments. I mean, Freddie just gave us so much great information about the world. I think you are the new historian of the world. You are it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm plodding along.
You are, and you definitely are. So thank you again, Freddie, for this being the amazing sacred explorer that you are, and bringing so much ancient knowledge of our planet together, and to making sense of it so that we all can, connect to it and understand who we really are and where it all comes from. It's so powerful what you're doing. So grateful for that. And you are also helping to unlock people's passions, their authenticity, creating the world they love, and accelerating their purpose on the earth, because you're showing them new ways to look at the earth and new ways to see ourselves on the planet and how it's all come about. It's so powerful.
If I can do it, you can do it.
This is true. So I am Janet Miller, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Thank you.